Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And today I want to talk about power affirmations. Power affirmations is a specific style of affirming. And with regards to creating your reality quickly and powerfully, for those of you who don't have time to mess around and need an exact formula to ensure that not only are you creating the proper affirmation to impress your subconscious mind with, but also that you accurately impress the subconscious mind. This is the video for you. By the end of this video, you will understand just what a power affirmation is, how that relates to manifesting and creating the reality of your dreams, and whether that means it's to manifest a specific person, to manifest wealth, to succeed in an endeavor, to change your body type, to become happy, develop a social circle, or ultimately, if you're simply sick and tired of not manifesting what you want, this video is for you. If you want to manifest in a predictable way, subscribe to my channel. Here I have experience-driven techniques derived from objective reality and the analysis of actual manifestations. So subscribe now if you want these broken down, systematic interpretations of event-driven, experience-driven manifestations. Then just do that now. So jumping into the idea of a power affirmation. What is an affirmation? Now, this is a phrase that is very popular. We're talking about law of attraction, law of assumption. It has filled the internet. Simply put, an affirmation is something that you can affirm, something that is affirmative, something that is stating a yes, an I am, a statement of truth. Now, there are a variety of affirmations, from super effective to ineffective. And I want to take you through the process of manifesting to describe quickly so that you can know without a doubt what manifesting is and how to utilize manifesting to get your desires, and then how that translates into a power affirmation. With regards to reality, it is commonly known that this reality is now modifiable by your mind. Now, this experience itself is the totality of yourself. Now, yourself doesn't just mean what you think about yourself. You love yourself. I am good, I am bad, I am happy, I am sad, I am ugly, I am fat, I am pretty, I am fit. Yourself is also all things that exist within the subconscious. So in other words, it's what you believe about the world as well. And belief doesn't just mean what you outwardly believe. It's what you even subconsciously judge. And those things combined create your experience. Now that translates into a practice by saying, whatever you hold within the sphere of your consciousness, your I am, will be manifested. So therefore, we have to figure out how to hold something within the sphere of our consciousness and how to get that to manifest. The key here is the impression of the subconscious mind. Now, there are a lot of psychological interpretations of how to do this. There are even interpretations as to what impressing the subconscious mind means, but I'm going to tell you quickly. So the impression of the subconscious mind is not the same thing as believing something. In other words, the same way as when a person manifests, they close their eyes and they visualize something. And then, independent of their internal self, the outside world will begin to shift and maneuver through a bridge of incidents, a series of events that'll naturally unfold and bring you to your end result. So the key here is to imagine something to the best of your ability. And when you do that, that is all you have to do. When you begin to, and what I really push to all of my viewers, is to systematically test. Test manifesting. It will not be disproven. You will not fail. Not only myself have I tested this countless times, and my teachings are based solely upon objective experience and observation through my own experiences and those people who have submitted them to me. But through essentially what you could do is through the process of objectively observing, you derive the common experiences in all manifestations. And through that, you can begin to formulate how you believe this reality works. So, but again here, the key is to simply imagine something, or in some way bring something forth within your consciousness, and that thing will push out. Now, imagination does not mean visualization. These are not the same words. A visualization is an imagination, is a piece of imagination, but then again, so is inner hearing or inner emotion or inner touch. So any of the imaginal senses, feeling, thought, or in other words, some inner experience, such as words or whatever, those count as imagination. So a power affirmation is the ability in a powerful way, a meticulous way, an exact, accurate way, a way that is provable to work, tested to work. Engage in the action of affirming something that it might be manifested. So in other words, once we test manifesting, once we have begun to have a large amount of experiences under our belt, we realize that, like I said, through visualization or through hearing or something, what happens is you impress the mind through imagining it, right? That is how you impress. Impressing does not mean believing something. The impression is something that you cannot detect in and of itself through your personal experience. So subconscious means it's non-conscious. So an impression subconsciously simply means you hold something within your mind and you imagine it enough times, one or more, until you feel that that experience itself has been experienced in a natural way. That can be one time, that can be 5 times, that can be 10 times, that can be 100 times. The important part here is that the context of your awareness, meaning your attention span, is to be fully fixated on this imaginal act while you are imagining. And then in that way, you can ensure that whatever's being impressed on the subconscious mind is in complete and full, total togetherness, or that wasn't the best, most eloquent way to address that. But in other words, when we do not keep our attention focused on the imaginal act, it can get split up into different ways, different scenes, different impressions. And you'll experience this. You probably have already by witnessing parts of manifestations unfolding, but not the whole thing, where it gets close to the end, but then it stops. This is generally one of a couple different, there are a couple of reasons why that could be, but the common one is the lack of focus, meaning that we are not fixated on this thing with all of our attention at that moment. This happens by rushing into a manifestation or through an imaginal act. This happens also through making it too long. Segments of it get impressed and then manifest in different times. Point being is we need to fix that. Now, one way that is fixable is through what is called an affirmation. And generally the way and the most common approach that people take is by repeating something over and over. Now, this is definitely a solution, and this works for manifesting. In other words, when you take a statement and repeat it enough times, one of those times you will get an impression, and therefore you will manifest this thing. Now, where the confusion lies often and where the ineffectiveness is when an individual confuses the thought that they must believe something for it to manifest. Now, if you've performed my list method experiment, which is on my previous video, and you've done this for a week or more, you've proven that you did not have to believe anything at all in order to get your manifestations. This was one of the first revelations that I have that proved to me that what I was reading in the books I was reading back in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, was not complete. This concept or idea that belief in and of itself was essential, faith in and of itself was essential, was completely shattered when I wrote something down once and closed my notebook and it happened. Then I began to wonder, is belief essential? Is it necessary? This used to rack my brain. I thought that and this is what I was taught in certain psychology circles when I was in, and for the record, the transition and growth that I have undergone through the result of manifesting has been absolutely, I'm not even recognizable from that point. So time I spent in the psych ward back in the early days, what they taught me was if I repeat something enough times, I will eventually believe it. But what I proved is that you can write something once and never think of it again, and it will happen. So essentially what I figured out was I compared that to my experience with manifesting, and I realized that when I imagine something, say I imagined like when I manifested my house, when I bought my house, I manifested my house, when I manifested moving to California, when I manifested my specific person, when I manifested my business, it was one single imaginal act, and then I stopped. And I didn't believe anything after. But then the bridge unfolded and got me there. And so I came to realize that the impression is not believing it. The impression is simply taking the inner action, holding something within our consciousness and allowing it to unfold after that fact. Simply put, imagine it and then move on. Do whatever you want to do. The act is finished. The impression is made. The manifestation will happen. So taking this into consideration and all the breadth of all the experiences that I had, when I wiped my slate clean after I began to realize that some of what I was reading was not true, I came to the point where I began to say, what would happen if I took the same process for imagining and put that forth towards beliefs? So in other words, to essentially reconcile the concept of manifesting, whereas I imagine something and then let it go and it happens, well then, is that not the same thing, or can it not be the same thing for instilling a belief? And so I took the form of an affirmation, and I said, let me apply this concept to it. And this is what I did, and this is the technique. You take the phrase that you wish to be true, and instead of repeating it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, I said, what would happen if I applied the same concept, imagining it to the best of my ability and then releasing it? The same concept to say, well, I didn't have to believe this thing in order for it to happen, so let me try to not believe this thing. For me to say, well, what is the end here? The end is me having this new belief, so what can I do to imagine having that new belief? In other words, the end is the affirmation. The bridge is the way to get from your current present circumstances to the belief. And the way I did that was with a power affirmation. So I took that phrase that I am in California, I am with my specific person, I am, it could be anything. At this point, I am self-employed. These were things that I literally did. This person acts this way. And what I did was I brought that into my mind's eye. Now, my mind's eye, again, is not just visual. So that in and of itself could be a phrase that's confusing, but imagination means the totality of the contents of your consciousness. Internal, the fictitious, the imaginary words, imaginary feelings, imaginary senses. And I brought that phrase, we'll take for an example, like I am married to my specific person. I am married to Athena. And what I would do is I would bring that phrase into my mind, and I would, this is the key part here, is the same way as when I visualize and I imagine something, and I imagine it until it's a clear depiction in my mind and then drop it. I did the same thing with these power affirmations. And essentially what I did was I took the phrase, in this case, I will give you the example. I am married to Athena, right? Take that. I'm married to Athena Raven for specificity purposes. Take that, bring that into the imagination, meaning into my inner hearing, and I will say that phrase in my mind. Now, the key here, again, is imagination. This is the creative power of man. As I have found, or humankind, as I have found, the teachings of Neville Goddard are crisply accurate. And the key that he says that I have found to be absolutely true through systematic testing is it's the active use of the imagination that gets the result. So in other words, to just simply repeat something unfeelingly will have a less chance per repetition of impressing the subconscious mind with the attention span. Remember, as compared to something that I am attempting to accurately and fully impress the subconscious mind with. Now remember, we're not confusing certain circles of modern psychology where when you repeat something infinitely, you begin to believe it. Remember, when we imagine something, we don't believe it and it still happens. For example, manifesting your free cup of coffee, etc. But what we do is we simply bring that into the imagination and repeat it loud and clear in the mind until it is that, loud and clear. Meaning you want to, the key here is hear yourself think. I am married to Athena Raven. I am married to Athena Raven. I am married to Athena Raven. All you have to do is repeat that phrase in your mind 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, depending on how long or short it is, until your mind doesn't wander from it. And once it's there, repeat it loud and clear in your mind, even as if you are yelling at yourself to accept it. After you do this, this could take 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. A feeling should generally emerge as a side effect, meaning this should be experienced as if it's true. Now, affirmations, just like any other imaginal act, is entering into the future temporarily, meaning into a dimension that already exists outside of time-space in eternity. So we are there temporarily when we are acting as if within the mind. So this happens during an attention span of just a few seconds. We enter into that consciousness temporarily. We leave our state and enter into a new. Doing this with all the totality of ourself, meaning experiencing it. And then you let it go. And what will happen is, that is all that is required. A seed will be dropped within the subconscious mind. This is always the analogy in biblical references. There's a seed, and within that seed is the contents of fulfillment. And what will happen is, as a result, the same way as with an imaginal act that you do once, you do twice, you do 3 times until it is a natural repetition of the mind, is it will unfold in and of itself. The contents of the seed contain the ways and means to reach its fulfillment, which means the fulfillment being this end statement. And then it will unfold and it will manifest. And that is a power affirmation. And essentially the difference, to sum it all up, is to repeat a phrase within the mind until it is loud and clear. And then when you stop doing it, you can accurately remember what you said. That is the key criteria of a power affirmation. And what will happen is the bridge of incidents will unfold. And instead of forcing yourself to attempt to believe it, or attempting to force yourself to believe it, your subconscious mind, which was impressed, will do the rest of the work to automatically force you to believe it. The affirmation is the end. That is the key here. That is how you do it. So I hope this was helpful for you. Do this and share your results with me. This with myself. Now, let me say this, I have done regular affirmations to repeat something endless amounts of times. This works. I have achieved some success with this. Absolutely. There is no doubt. I know you have as well. If I have, you have. But what I found is when I follow the core principles that is perceivable only through experience, when you realize there are common denominator traits that are common in all manifestations, the same practices apply everywhere. You use the same aspect of creation as you do with an imaginal act, with a visualization, with scripting. And you take that and you apply that to the simple formula of an affirmation. And that is how you get the results. I have done it before, but this way allows me, instead of redundantly doing this, meaning with a robotic or repetitive affirmation that you do infinitely, what will happen is you will impress the subconscious mind, and then after that is done, it is ineffective. Any imaginal act you perform after that, which is also an affirmation, is ineffective. So once you realize, so you will find your sweet spot. You will find your sweet spot of the ability to predict when you have impressed your subconscious mind when you begin to test this. And then what I did was, instead of doing affirmations thousands of times, I would only have to do a power affirmation once or twice or 3 times in my mind and never again. And that allowed me to move on to the next desire and the next desire and the next desire. So essentially what it is, that's why it's called a power affirmation, is it's way more impactful and effective than the standard because it bases upon principles that are timeless and repeatable and the actual definition of what must be done in a very specific predictable way, and the results are just as predictable. You no longer have to worry or hope right? No more hope manifesting. Use this to a systematic way. Well, anyway, like I said, if you want results, subscribe to my channel. Not only will you get the breakdowns of the actual implementable behind the scenes techniques, but you will also learn systematically how to test manifesting as well, to come up and derive your own ideas and understanding so that you don't need me anymore. So hit that subscribe button, comment below with your results, and what do you think? What's been your experience with this? And I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much.